What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to look at the reviews for Ghost of Yotei. They are out, and to be honest with you, they are higher than I thought, just by a little bit, and they're also higher than Ghost of Tsushima. That's something I want to talk a little bit about in this video. So, there's a lot of people that got the code for this game, and we knew that PlayStation was pretty confident. We knew that it was going to come out a week before, the game releases, and I think it's off of, 106, 107 reviews, and that's just on Metacritic. It doesn't even consider the kind of funnies or the skill ups or any of the kind of YouTube side. I imagine maybe close to 200 different reviews of this game are out. So if you want to go in depth on anyone individually, you obviously know where to get them. But I want to go over the collection of opinions in the way that I do it for my own videos here. And let's start with just the basic score, which again, 87. Now, and I made a YouTube short on this a little while ago predicting what the score would be. I think I thought it was going to be like mid 80s. I think 86 was my high. So I was actually pretty darn close. But if you remember, Ghost of Tsushima actually was lower than you might have remembered it being. Ghost of Tsushima only got an 83. Now, I actually think that's way too low. I just replayed it myself literally like 2 weeks ago. Phenomenal game that does have problems, but I don't think it gets it to an 83. And I believe the director's cut was an 87. So this is more in line with that, which I don't really, Icky Island was included, but, this game literally has a higher score by 0.4 than Ghost of Tsushima. Now, in terms of what is actually being said, is it better than Ghost of Tsushima? And I think that it's pretty much across the board. It's a lot of things have improved, except for maybe the story. And we're going to go a little bit more into detail on that, but that's kind of like the base thing, which, to be honest with you, if you've watched my, 10 videos covering Ghost of Yotei in the last month, I've really tried to predict all of those elements. I think Yotei looked like it was going to improve in some ways, and then other ways it never really gave me a lot of confidence from the story and from the premise that it could outdo, in my opinion, one of the most underrated stories in the last 10, 15, 20 years of games, which is Ghost of Tsushima. I think that game just has such an unbelievable story. It's got amazing kind of moving parts to it. It tells a very different kind of story in terms of, kind of losing that samurai code and, what happens between Jin and his uncle, right, Shimura. It's really incredible, that story, and I think it's better than you might remember it being, to be honest with you. And again, that comes from me playing it 2 weeks ago. But so this game, from what I've seen, now, yes, it's going to range, okay? You're going to have, there's a couple sites that I think gave it a 6, 7. There's a lot of 9s. I think 9 is the most, often score, which makes sense, right? You got a couple 6s, couple 7s. There's a couple in the 8s or the low 8s, and then how you balance that, to get an average of 87. Obviously, you have a lot of 9s and then a couple, a handful of 10s, which is really what you got. So, yes, it's going to kind of depend on which review you're reading, but generally, they talk about the gameplay being even more fluid and just better, better overall than Ghost of Tsushima. It's not reinventing the wheel, and that is something that I had seen time and time, a bunch of these reviews, okay, so many times. A lot of the sentiment is it doesn't reinvent the wheel on anything, okay? It really is that massive amount of polish and just being kind of the best thing it can be in a pre-established thing, okay, if that makes sense. So the combat, it's not going to shock you that it's pretty similar to Ghost of Tsushima. I think I saw some people talk about that. A lot of the upgrades you get in this game are very in line with what you can do as Jin in Ghost of Tsushima. So it's not, again, coming up with anything super brand new, but it's a lot of fun. The gameplay is arguably, depending on the person you're listening to, it's more fluid. One thing I saw pretty much everywhere except for the 6s and 7s was the open world. The open world is the thing that got the best kind of fresh coat of paint, over it. And maybe that's not even the right kind of analogy, because they really, leading into this game, had talked about that was a major focus, right? More things to do and less times you do those things. Versus Ghost of Tsushima, look, you do the same 6 things a ton of times. The the amount of fox dens, and yes, foxes are cute, and I always tried to pet them in Tsushima, they could become very annoying once you do them, honestly, maybe 40, 50 times. The bamboo strikes, obviously there's a lot of areas that you have to kind of liberate, from Mongols and stuff. So this one, there's a lot of talk of, there's more things to do. It's more like how they're introduced to you makes more sense, or it feels better. There's twists to a lot of them. So if you see, I think I saw one example that you're going to do that bamboo strike thing while drunk. So like the screen is kind of like odd, right, when you're pressing the button combinations. So trying to take these pre-established things that, to be honest, some of them we have done like 30 to 50 times in Ghost of Tsushima. Well, how can you put that in this game, even if it's 10 times? How can you do it with something kind of new to it? And that's the way, right? I saw a lot of things about side quests. You're going to meet so many characters that are asking for help, and there's a lot more to do. It's different stuff. It is, again, kind of a more refined style versus Ghost of Tsushima, and that is the stuff that I was really hoping for and honestly expecting. Okay, that was the really big element that, look, you watch this game, you see at any point that we have seen it. The gameplay does look very familiar, with a couple things being swapped in and out, right? That you can do. Maybe you can't do some things that Jin could do. Maybe you can do things that Jin couldn't do, okay? So you can see that. So that's not all that shocking that it's not the most, inventive thing of all time. The side quest and open world stuff, they had talked a lot about that, but ultimately judgment is reserved until we get our hands on it, or I guess in this case, these people get their hands on it. And then finally, okay, there's the story. Now, the story is something, again, I've talked about so much in so many videos because, again, that high respect I have for Tsushima. So what I saw a lot of people talking about is it is very, very much by the books. It is what you think is what you're going to get. And I'm not pleased with that. I'll be honest with you. I'm not. That makes me a little bit sad. Should it have been expected? Maybe. I guess, let me say this, too. I mean, I still have to play it. Like, I'm very much looking forward to playing this game and then doing my own review, but, like, hearing all of this, like, it does kind of pass that just basic, like, check test, right, where I had thought that it was going to struggle to tell a story kind of as complex in the way that it did in Ghost of Tsushima, when in this game, it's a revenge tale, right? And what I saw for so many reviews is it does the revenge tale about as good as you could possibly hope. But if it's anything more than that, it's not in this game. And that maybe was to be expected. That was probably where the expectation was, I think, from a lot of people. That is the thing I imagine has held this game back from getting in the 90s. If you're looking at going back to the actual score itself, right? What kind of sinks it? Well, some of the lower sites actually did talk about that the open world stuff isn't good. But I don't know. You have like 100 sites saying it is really good, and then you have like 6 sites saying it's bad. So ultimately, we're going to make our own decisions. We're the most important people, right? Actually, you are the most important person, the person that buys the game. It only really matters what you think about it, not what I think, not what any of these fools think. It matters specifically what you think about the game because you're the one buying it. But so, I mean, obviously taking it all with a grain of salt, right? I'm looking forward to it. I really am. The story, I'm interested now to see. I'm actually, in a way, I'm more interested because the way, like the language that's being used in these reviews about specifically the story and the characters and all that stuff is interesting because it's, hey, like, they do it the best you could possibly hope for, but it is what it is. Like, the revenge tale is told really strongly. Like, there are emotional moments. It is, like, visually very, very impressive. Like, it does all that stuff. But if you're looking for anything deeper, that's not really there. So I don't know, like, will I come away from it more impressed because maybe my expectations are a little bit lower than they should be now? I don't know. I guess that's the fun part of playing it for ourselves. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.